What's up, guys? Welcome back to Fit Body Secrets, where my mission is to bring you guys inspiration, motivation, and a ton of tips to help y'all on your fitness and your fat loss journey. And I'm going to go ahead and get myself live on Instagram. Good morning, Instagram fam. Bear with me as I get everybody synced up here, sipping on my coffee. I'm going to make sure I'm live first before I start talking. Good morning, Holly. Do I have two Hollies on? Good morning, Cammie. Good morning, guys. Happy Tuesday. I honestly probably should have made this episode about bouncing back after holidays, because I know a lot of you guys are already or probably still in your head a little bit about Easter Sunday. And I hope that you guys all enjoyed your Easter holiday. Mine was like super busy. I've had two really busy weekends, but so like nice and like low key also. But fun stuff. I didn't make the traditional Easter dinner this year, but I still felt like I was cooking all day. So it's crazy how that works out. I actually made a delicious, healthier carrot cake. The entire cake, I think, had like less than 500 calories and had like 46 grams of protein. And I wouldn't recommend always doing that, because obviously sometimes the real thing is the real thing. And it was definitely not the same as having that piece of carrot cake, which I love, but it was a nice substitute, and I did absolutely love it. But today's topic, we're not going to be talking about that. Good morning. Is it Jabi? Hopefully I'm saying your name right. Today, guys, we're going to be talking a lot about protein. I just made a post on my social media. If you guys have questions regarding protein, you're like, protein, this is so boring. Well, protein is the most important thing you take in. It's the most important nutrient you take in. If you ever are like, what do I eat? And you're like looking for something, it's protein. Like, this is like, your diet should be protein at every single meal. And I'm going to talk more about, how much protein do you actually need and all that kinds of stuff. But protein is the most important nutrient that we take in. And there are a lot of things that can go wrong if we're not getting in enough protein. And I also want to go over some nuanced things that you guys might need to hear about that are important regarding protein. So if you guys have questions as I get rolling, please feel free to obviously shoot them out here for me, because protein is required no matter if you are looking to lose body fat, lose weight, if you're looking to improve your performance in the gym, if you're looking to improve your hormones, if you're looking to look and feel younger, if you're looking for your hair, skin, and nails to look better, you need to be focusing on protein. So the first thing I'm going to start with is diving into a little bit of the stuff that are signs that maybe you are having insufficient protein intake. Now, I want to start by taking a step back before I go into protein specifically, that this is where people go into this like whole calories versus macros debate. Is sufficient calorie intake and protein intake should be the base of your diet no matter what. But I'm going to focus primarily on protein today. So these are going to be some signs of insufficient protein intake. And why I mention that is because often insufficient calorie intake can also lead to a lot of the similar problems. However, even in a calorie deprived state, if you're getting enough protein, sometimes these things are going to be more minimized. So the first thing you're going to see is muscle loss or poor muscle recovery. You might feel like you're always sore, you're weaker in workouts. Maybe you're not seeing, any kind of strength gains despite your training hard. Maybe you are easily injured. You're having a hard time recovering from injury. And this is big for a lot of my women in CrossFit who are in the ages of like 35 plus. And you're hitting the gym hard and you're like, man, maybe my body just can't handle this as much anymore. You might be needing enough, making sure that you're getting enough protein to prevent injury for tissue repair. If your protein is low, muscle recovery is going to be slower. Healing is also going to be slower. So even wounds are going to heal slower. If you have a lot of frequent hunger and cravings, especially for things that are high in sugar or high in carbs, protein is obviously usually the solution to this. It is very satiating, and low intake can honestly make you feel chronically like you're just not ever satisfied with your meal. So if you have like a few Cheez-Its, you're like, oh, I could eat like, 2 bags of those and still not feel full. Whereas if you added some protein to that, you might actually feel more satiated. A big one, and people are all going down the rabbit holes of supplements, is things like thinning hair, brittle nails, and skin issues. Even those of you guys are like, man, maybe I should start taking collagen. Why collagen? It is a protein. Sometimes just sufficient protein intake can be way cheaper and also give you the same benefits. So protein does help your body maintain healthy skin, hair, and nails. And this is typically where you're going to see the biggest deficiency. We'll see this often also in extreme calorie changes. So if you've drastically dropped your calories or lost a lot of weight really quickly, you will sometimes see a thinning in your hair, changes in your nails and your skin. A big one, which people don't even recognize, is your immune system becomes weaker. You're more prone to injury and illness, frequent colds. Protein does support your immune cell function and production. So if you're not getting in enough protein, you will see that your immune system can be compromised. And another big one is mood changes and brain fog. Guys, amino acids are the precursors to neurotransmitters, those things like serotonin and dopamine, which are going to help make you feel good, help you be more focused, and help you with mood and cognition throughout the day. So those are some signs that you might not be getting enough protein. And it's why it's so important. I'm a big believer in food tracking. People are always like, oh, food tracking is this one like extra step or whatever. It's like time consuming. Like, well, if you're dealing with all this shit on a regular basis, tracking to make sure you're getting enough protein, and there's ways to do it without tracking it, but making sure that you're getting enough protein is possibly going to remove all of this crap that you've been dealing with. Okay. Some other things that can happen from long-term low protein intake is, I already kind of mentioned the impact on muscle, but like body composition is going to change. So if you all of a sudden like decrease your protein intake, you're going to see that you have less muscle mass, your resting metabolic rate will go down, and you will also have a harder time losing fat. And if you are in a calorie deficit and you're trying to lose weight and you're not focusing on getting enough protein, your body will start to catabolize lean muscle tissue for energy, because muscle tissue is energy sucking. It requires energy to maintain. So without adequate calories, your body will try and get rid of any extra use of calories so that it can maintain those calories for the processes in your body that it needs for survival, like breathing, like, digestion, like heart pumping. Those things are going to be prioritized over making sure that you have enough lean muscle mass. Okay. Other things that can happen from low protein intake, which is also very big for my women over 35, is hormonal disruptions. Cortisol does tend to increase when we have a low protein and stress is high. This is not going to be ideal for you guys looking to, obviously, feel good in your workouts, to have, good body composition, and or to lose body fat. Thyroid hormones tend to downregulate when the body is not getting enough protein or enough calories. And that can be issues. Insulin sensitivity can also decline because you have a lack of lean muscle tissue, and that's going to make it harder for you to actually handle glucose. So a lot of people focus on, oh my God, carbs are the enemy. Sometimes it's like, just get more protein and get more activity in and get more strength training in to build lean muscle mass. I already kind of mentioned this, but you might have where you feel like you're eating, but you're never quite satisfied. And just increasing your protein intake can help regulate your appetite, because it helps regulate things like leptin and ghrelin and PYY. These things are going to be important for you to be able to maintain and sustain a calorie deficit to lose body fat. So I'm going to go into the opposite of this really quickly before I kind of get into today's stuff, which I guess I'm already kind of getting into today's stuff, but I wanted to kind of cover some signs and things like that you might not be getting enough protein. Is you could also get too much protein. All right. And so too much protein isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's not going to cause any, negative side effects on your kidneys and all that. Your body is very resilient. Unless you are predisposed to some kind of a kidney issue, you won't have to worry about excessive protein intake, but it actually is not really very useful. Mm-hmm. And all that happens to excess protein is a process called gluconeogenesis. And what that basically is your body is going to produce or convert excess protein into glucose. So it just becomes sugar. At the end of the day, that's all that happens to extra protein. So you actually have a limit to how much protein you need, but not a limit to how much protein you can ingest. That extra protein just gets converted into usable energy. So it's not going to be that big of a deal. So another main thing about excess protein intake that is really important that I always want to mention is when we talk about fat loss, a high protein diet can be more preferred because protein is the most thermogenic of all three of the macronutrients. And protein doesn't turn to fat as easily as carbs and fats when in a true surplus. There's actually been studies that have shown that people being put in a calorie surplus primarily from protein did not gain any body fat, Whereas they did another study of people that were put in a calorie surplus of higher carbs and fats, and they did increase their body fat because protein requires so much energy for digestion and absorption and conversion and all that kinds of stuff. Okay, so hopefully that gives you guys some things to consider when we're talking about protein intake. Now, I want to get into some of the stuff that I really wanted to talk about today, because if you're hearing all this stuff and you're like, man, maybe I need to work on my protein intake, I want to start by just saying, let's simplify things first and foremost. Like, protein is protein. You can get protein from all of your foods, but I want to talk about some more specific things in terms of the types of protein sources that you guys are using and some considerations that you might have based on your gut health, based on your dietary preferences, based on convenience factors, based on how your body responds to training or the type of training you do. These are the things that are going to be a little bit more nuanced that you guys might not know enough about. And I want to educate you guys on this stuff right now, because you guys have all heard, I got to get my protein. I got to get my protein. You know, you got to get your protein in. So let me give you some more specifics on this stuff today. The first thing that I want to talk about is the amino acid profile of proteins. Okay, so every gram of protein has 4 calories, all right? So our part of our dietary needs are coming from protein. And our proteins get broken down into amino acids. And there are about 20 total amino acids, 9 are essential, and our body cannot make them on our own, okay? A complete protein is going to have all 9 essential amino acids. These are going to be coming from primarily animal-based sources, things like meat, eggs, dairy, whey protein. Those are going to be your main complete protein sources, okay? But there are also incomplete protein sources, which are going to be most of your plant-based protein sources. You can still hit your protein needs with things like rice and beans and lentils and vegetarian-based options like like tempeh and textured vegetable protein, soy. You're going to get, in fact, soy, I believe, is one that actually is a complete and vegan-based protein. But you're going to be able to get protein, but you're not going to get all of those amino acids. Oftentimes, these proteins can be lacking some of those 9 essential amino acids, and it's really important to make sure we are getting a complete dose. So oftentimes, I do have to be a little bit more specific on the types of proteins with my vegan or vegetarian, well, vegetarian not so much, but my vegan-based clients, to ensure that they are getting some of those amino acids that they might be lacking from their diet. Now, of all of your amino acids that you're going to get from protein, leucine is the amino acid that is considered like the MVP, the most valuable player. This is the amino acid that triggers muscle protein synthesis. And this is what you're going to get mostly from those animal-based dairy sources and things like that. So leucine is literally the most important thing for muscle protein synthesis. When we're talking about muscle protein synthesis, which I'm going to get into, this is basically how your body builds lean muscle tissue. We've got muscle protein breakdown and muscle protein synthesis. We need that leucine to help with muscle protein synthesis. Now, when it comes to protein intake, okay, there's a lot of myths out there about how much protein you can absorb per meal and all this kinds of stuff. And it's because a lot of people get hung up in confusing muscle proteins or protein synthesis with protein digestion or protein absorption. And there are 3 different things, okay? Protein digested, protein absorbed, and protein synthesized are 3 different things that we have to cover, okay? So protein digestion or protein intake is, hey, hypothetically, I tracked my food today and I logged 160 grams of protein. So I ingested 160 grams of protein. Now, not all of that protein may be absorbed, okay? Because everybody's gut, based on the gut microbiome, stomach acids, digestive enzymes, are going to absorb a different amount of protein from that food. Some of it does not get absorbed. Nutrient absorption is a problem for people that have gut issues, and why oftentimes they have to overshoot things like protein in order just to get enough protein to be absorbed for their body while they are dealing with trying to find the root cause of their gut problems. Okay, so protein intake, we have to digest it, and then it gets absorbed into our body. There are different types of proteins. We have fast digesting and slow digesting proteins, just like we have fast digesting and slow digesting carbs. And oftentimes people that struggle with a lot of nutrient absorption, need to have a little bit more of the faster acting, quicker protein absorption. I'm sorry, quicker digesting proteins to help get those things shuttled right into their bloodstream. And this is where things like isolated whey protein can be really helpful. It doesn't have to go through so much of the digestive process. Other things a little bit more slower digested, like casein protein or different types of animal-based proteins, or things that have a lot more things to break down, are going to really keep you full a little bit longer, but sometimes for those people can be hard for them to digest. So the most important thing that I want you guys to know right now is that based on your gut health, you might need a little bit more fast digesting protein, but also for satiation factor, I want you guys to recognize that having a bunch of fast digested proteins isn't going to leave you feeling as satiated, because it's kind of like drinking your carbs. It's going to be quick digested and you're going to be hungry again. So depending on where you're at, I do really try and focus on getting my clients to eat more of their protein rather than looking for a lot of those fast digested sources, because those things can be a little bit more satiating in a fat loss phase. Now, there are times when fast digested protein can be helpful. If you're somebody that's in the competition setting, so it's like you've got like 3 or 4 workouts in a day, and you're going like you've got to work out at like 9 a.m., 12 p.m., 2 p.m., 4 p.m. Those faster acting digested proteins are really going to be helpful for you to improve your performance and recovery, because you don't have, your body's going to be under that chronic stress all day. But for the most part, for most people generally, if you're getting some good protein in every few hours, even when I'm going to talk a little bit about more like workout timing and stuff, you don't have to really stress so much about like, oh, I've got to get like this fast digested protein here and this like slow digested protein here. It's mostly understanding that you have to just make sure you've got enough protein in your bloodstream. Okay. So now let's talk a little bit about protein synthesis. Just because you eat protein doesn't mean your muscles are actually going to use it. Okay. So muscle protein synthesis is a different process. It is the process that we are building muscle tissue. And it is triggered from a combination of resistance training and adequate protein being available, primarily, especially from leucine. Okay. So we need to have a balance of muscle protein breakdown and muscle protein synthesis. So when you're training, you're breaking things down, and that's going to trigger the body to synthesize more protein to build things back up. So we need to have that training response in order for our body to utilize protein, and we need to have the protein available for that. But this is where we can kind of go into the nuanced stuff where people are like, you may have heard your body can only synthesize or absorb so much protein per sitting. And I want to really talk about this because this is such a myth, okay? Protein absorption and protein synthesis are 2 different things, as I've already said, okay? So if you have a meal with 60 grams of protein, it doesn't mean that your body is only going to absorb 30 grams of protein. That's not what happens. Your body doesn't like all of a sudden be like, oh, I'm only going to take this 30 grams of protein. The rest of it's not going to do that. Your body stores it. And when your body throughout the day, when your body is breaking down muscle tissue, whatever you're doing, your body is going to access those stored amino acids to help with protein synthesis. So while it is important to make sure that you are getting protein spread out throughout the day for better absorption of that protein, as I mentioned, because too much in one sitting can be hard on the body to digest, having protein in larger amounts, throughout the day is okay. Your body's not going to just all of a sudden just trash that protein. It does get stored in your body, but it can be better for absorption of it if our nutrients are spread out. And this goes for all nutrients. Okay. You're going to feel better. Your gut's going to perform better for your body to absorb things and digest things if it's getting some frequent feedings throughout the day. We could talk about frequency of feeding in another episode, but really every, call it 3 to 4 hours, thinking about taking in some quality protein is a good rule of thumb for you. As long as you have adequate amino acids available, your body is going to be able to be able to synthesize protein. So don't overthink that kinds of stuff. Okay. So let's talk about how much protein you actually need. And I'm going to go into, I have a bunch of stuff that I want to go into with this. As I mentioned, absorption matters most, but a good place to start is around 1 gram per pound of body weight or goal body weight. Okay, so if you are looking to lose weight, looking at your weight that you're looking to sit at for maintenance. If you're looking to gain weight, looking at the weight you want to sit at for maintenance. And if you are in a fat loss phase, being on the higher end can be helpful because it does help protect lean muscle tissue and will help you feel more satiated. So sometimes in a fat loss phase, I actually might overshoot this a little bit for people. Now, I have seen horrible diet plans from people that have come to me that are, I have a population of people that maybe have like 50, 75, even 100 pounds to lose. And it's a female and she's like 5'5" and she's like over 200 pounds and she's trying to eat 225 grams of protein a day. I'm like, yo, you do not need to be eating that much protein. Like your body is not, especially if they're not working out. I mean, God, that's a lot of protein for someone that's maybe working out 4 times a week. You don't need all that protein. And that's just an uneducated coach telling you that you should be eating 1 gram per pound of weight. And that's what they're telling you. Okay. So you have to look at goal body weight or ideal body weight is another good one to look at. So if you're not really sure what your goal body weight is, this is where pulling out like a BMI chart can be helpful. What is like a typical weight range for somebody in my height to give you a general idea of where your protein should be. Okay. You can, like I mentioned, you can overeat protein, but it's really hard for your body to store protein as fat unless you're getting an abundance of calories from carbs and fats, in which those calories will start to become stored as fat. But most people tend to undereat protein. It's the hardest nutrient for a lot of people, unless you have for a period of time followed a diet that is very protein based. So this is where I do kind of like the whole, I'm not big on diet trends, but things like carnivore, paleo, anything that's really pushing protein as the main focus can make it really easy for people to adjust to eating a protein-based diet, which every meal when we're eating should have some form of protein. Okay. It is the best, like I mentioned, to kind of get it spread out throughout your day. So waking up, have some protein, and your snacks have some protein. Every meal should have some protein. People tend to really overthink this, like way, way, way too much. Like I think the easiest thing that I've always reminded myself is somewhere between 4 and 6 ounces of a cooked protein. If I'm adding dairy to it, I can probably cut that by, like if I'm doing 6 ounces of lean protein, probably go down to 4 and add some dairy. Dairy-based proteins is usually like 1 to 2 cups. Keeping it super simple because that usually gives you the basics, and then you can just tweak amounts based on your needs. So don't overthink that. Let's talk a little bit about protein timing because this also does play a factor, I think, for a lot of people. And another thing that I think people get a little bit nuanced and geeked out on. I have seen a lot of people pushing the need for like protein pre-workout and protein post-workout. And people are like, oh my God, like I'm going to be muscle wasting if I don't get my protein in within that 45-minute window. What I want to tell you is this, is if you are eating every 3 to 4 hours, you are going to be eating enough protein in your post-workout window because chances are your workout is going to fall somewhere in there. And within 1 to 2 hours of your workouts, you are also eating protein. Now, it is, if you're looking to really optimize because you're like, I want to like nail my protein. Like, so if you're beyond like getting enough protein throughout your day and you're like, I want to do this next thing. If you are prioritizing mostly 20 to 40 grams of protein with some carbs post-workout, you will have a little bit of more of an optimization response because that's just going to be like topping things off. But your overall protein intake for the day is what matters most. So if you're looking to take it to the next level, yes, making sure that you're prioritizing a high protein, easy digested protein in that post-workout window can be very helpful. But for most people, what they need to focus on is that only matters if you're getting enough protein throughout your day. Like that's what matters most. The types of protein, which I already kind of touched on. All right. So like, I honestly, in a fat loss phase, don't push a lot of protein shakes because protein shakes can be very, like, they're not very filling, right? They're like, oh, I just drank this drink and I'm still hungry. Whereas that like 100 or 150 calories could have come from something like Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, maybe make it a protein smoothie, like something a little bit more satiating rather than just like sucking down an 8-ounce, cup of protein shake with water, like, or protein powder and water. It can be helpful for recovery, but in a fat loss phase, I personally think that most people benefit more from eating their protein, unless they are really struggling with getting enough protein. So if you're looking to optimize, there are 2 to 3 places in your day that I would really make sure that you're putting enough protein. I mentioned just now in that post workout, but more important than that is first thing in the morning and before bed. So, first thing in the morning, you should be starting your day with protein. I don't care what else you do with it, but like get some protein in first day. A lot of people that struggle with fat loss, they're starting their day with carbs, and they're starting their day with carbs and fats. Like it's a granola bar, it's a frappuccino, it's a bagel sandwich, which might have a little bit of protein, but it's more carbs and fats than it is protein. Okay, you should be starting your day with protein first. There's a lot of easy ways to do this. Protein in your coffee, having a protein bar, making a protein smoothie, having a bowl of Greek yogurt with some berries, having some eggs with some egg whites. There's plenty of ways to get protein first, but you should be starting your day off with some form of protein. You should also be ending your night with some protein. Having a high protein snack before bed can help keep you satiated so that you don't wake up from a blood sugar response. It also helps your body with recovery throughout the night, because a lot of people like to talk about fasting, right? What do you think your body is doing all night? Having adequate protein before bed is a great way to ensure that you are having enough protein on board to make sure that your body can, do what it's got to do while you're sleeping, because that's when your body is repairing. That's when your body is changing. All the things you do throughout your day, your body is adapting to at night. So that's why sleep is so important. Also could be a totally another episode. The last thing that I want to talk about is protein quality. And I always want to focus on looking at making sure that we're getting real food first. Okay. So your protein, unless you are vegan, vegetarian, which is still should be coming from mostly natural sources, the majority of your protein should be coming from animal-based sources. And that's why I don't have anything against a vegan-based diet, because I do have vegan clients, but you are going to be at an advantage if you aren't a vegan, because you have access to all of these great, full, complete proteins. And the majority of your proteins should be coming from those things. You also do get proteins, though, from other sources. So, for instance, for me, I'm eating a higher carb diet because I'm an athlete. And so a lot of my carbohydrate sources also have protein in them from the wheat. So like I had 2 English muffins for breakfast. There was 10 grams of protein in those 2 English muffins. Was that a protein source for me? Not directly, but it added another 10 grams of protein to my meal, which already had eggs, egg whites, and low-fat cheese. So it was a way to bump up my protein. So looking at your other sources of carbs and fats as also ways to get protein. And this is where, going back to being vegan or vegetarian, you have to be a little bit smarter about where you're getting your carbs and fats. Vegans and vegetarians, usually when they're looking to prioritize protein, need to build their diet base around a lot of beans, legumes, soy, like tofu, nuts and seeds, peas, those types of things, because that's going to get you quinoa, whole grain pastas that are made with like chickpeas. Those are things that are going to give you lots of protein. Vegetables have a little bit of protein, mushrooms, believe it or not. And then after that stuff is the base of your diet. That's when we want to be looking at adding in some of those faster digested protein sources like protein shakes and protein bars. And the other thing about like adding in those things is that's also where you can look at, if you are trying to eat a healthier diet, finding ways to make, so you're somebody that like loves cookies, or you love cake, or you love ice cream. Making high protein versions of those things can be a way for you to get your protein in, but also get it in a way that actually is enjoyable to you. I don't want your whole diet to be protein bars and protein cookies and protein Ninja Creamies, but having those things throughout your day can make your diet more sustainable while also giving you the protein that you need. So I think that so many people run into this issue of like, they think that when they envision protein, it's just like this piece of, like, all that comes to my mind is this piece of like white chicken breast on my plate with like nothing else, or like this bowl of egg whites with like nothing else, or this can of tuna. It doesn't have to be that way. Getting your protein is really about looking at building your meals protein based. but looking at it in a way that you would actually enjoy it. So examples might be, if you like tacos, rather than having more tortilla and chips and rice and beans, you're thinking, okay, the lean ground beef needs to be the base, and I'm adding these other things as condiments, and I'm going to add the same flavors to that dish, but it's going to be more protein based. If you like pasta, it's like, okay, I'm gonna make sure I'm getting either some shrimp or some chicken or some other kind of protein based source, and I'm going to have some sauce and some cheese, which is more protein, and I'm going to use a pasta that's going to give me a little bit more protein. And I'm getting all of these different proteins while getting the food that I want. That's where it really does help to, I like people to do a little bit of a brain dump on your favorite meals when you're not thinking about protein, not thinking about dieting, because it helps you see, okay, these are the foods I like. How can I make them in ways that are going to get me more protein for less calories? Like, that's really what sustainable diet really is about when we're talking about seeing fat loss. So wanted to kind of cover that. I want to go ahead and open up the floor to any questions on protein. What questions do you guys have about protein? Feel free to shoot me them over. India, I want to lose weight. Good morning, Bruce. Good to see you. Jabi, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. Hopefully I'm saying that. He says, India, age 22, weight is 98 kilos, which is 98, 180. That would be 186. No, I can't even do it. That's almost 200. Oh, I can't do kilo conversion this early in the morning, can I? 90 times 2 is 180 plus 16 is 196. So you're about 220-ish, 215 to 220-ish, I believe. And 176 centimeters. So, I'm not good about that either. That's probably, I'm going to think 5'9"-ish, maybe. Maybe I'm off. Started going to the gym. So my suggestion to you is, if you're trying to lose weight, to start keeping a food diary. That's step number 1. Okay. So we talk about fat loss. The first thing you got to do is, this is not the topic of today, but if you guys are like, hey, I'm trying to start a fat loss journey, this is how simple it is. Start tracking your food. Like, let's see what's going in, because in order for you to lose weight, we have to know why you're gaining. That's step number 1. Just start keeping a food diary. And then from there, you can start adjusting based on changing calories, changing macros, getting enough protein. What other questions you guys have today? It does not have to be about protein, but it can be about protein, because I'm going to be signing off here pretty soon. Guys, protein is so important. You cannot go wrong by getting, even if you get too much protein, you can't go wrong. I know I mentioned you don't need that much protein, but if you get too much protein, you're covering the bases. And I think the other thing that I really wanted to touch on is making sure that you understand the difference between protein taken in versus protein actually absorbed. But what other questions do you guys have about protein? Protein sources? What about fitness? What about fat loss? Everybody feeling good after the Easter holiday? Nobody's dealing with any post-holiday food remorse? Nobody wants to talk to me. I actually like having conversations with you guys. All right. Well, the last thing that I'm going to talk about is it's April 22nd. I am planning on doing another workshop coming up here in the beginning of May, and I want to gear it towards anti-inflammatory systems. I'll touch on that. I want to gear it towards women over 35 specifically, especially going through things like perimenopause, menopause, hormonal changes. And I'm saying 35 because I know that a lot of people don't experience these changes until around mid 40s. But as somebody that is 39 and has been coaching women in their 40s and 30s and 20s and 50s and 60s, I have a lot of experience seeing when problems arise. And I want to be preventative and proactive and also reactive. And I want to do a workshop kind of talking a little bit about how to deal with some of the hormonal changes for women through aging. And I don't want to title it perimenopause, menopause, because I know that's the big thing that people focus on, but that is going to be a big focus of it. So if you guys are interested in that, it's going to be popping up in early May. Felice has a question. Any anti-inflammatory tips? If you are dealing with inflammation, there's quite a few things that I'm going to look at. The first thing that I'm going to be looking at is your body fat percentage. Why? A lot of people look at diet. They look at diet. They look at stress. They look at, stress is a good one. That's the second thing they look at. But they look at diet. They look at foods, food allergies, food sensitivities, gut stuff. The first thing that I look at is body fat percentage. Why? Because excess body fat is inflammatory in itself. Having excess body fat is an inflammatory process. Not having enough body fat is also going to cause inflammation. So that's the first thing I'm going to look at. And then I'm going to look at lifestyle. So I'm going to look at how much you're sleeping, what your stress levels are like, and then I'm going to look at your diet. So because typically, if a person has high body fat, their diet's also probably shit. So I will look at your diet. And oftentimes people are, once again, going to focus on specific foods. Oh, it's my body has got I can't take in these inflammatory foods. Oftentimes it's looking at overall calories, macronutrient balance, and getting in enough micronutrients. In fact, I made a post about this today. Guys, your diet is not just one or the other. It's not just food quality. It's not just the amounts of foods. It's both things together. It's also food timing. It's also all of the things. But those two things, quality and amounts, are the two things. So I would want to be taking a look at your body fat percentage, your stress levels, your diet history, your stress history. And then I would be looking at your diet from a qualitative perspective and then a quantitative perspective. Those are all the things. Sleep is probably one of the biggest causes of inflammation, but inflammation can also cause poor sleep. So it's kind of like the chicken or the egg scenario. So I would say, Felice, you should probably get an assessment done. If you want to, just hit me a DM. I'll send you over an assessment link and kind of give you some thoughts on what I think you should be focusing on. Because inflammation I was dealing with inflammation and it's subsiding now. I was dealing with a lot of chronic inflammation for a long time, and it was brutal. Like the things that I couldn't do were like, and it wasn't because of my diet. I eat a very good diet. It was because my sleep was crap. My stress levels were too high. So, but those are some of the things I think about. Other questions? That was a good question. Let me see. You might have covered this, but it took me a long time to realize peanut butter nuts are more of this is a good question. I love this. Those of you guys, speaking of like food quality, Judy had made a good comment here, is a lot of people look to things like peanut butter as a source of protein, or nuts as a source of protein, because that's what back in the day, or you'll see a package that says 8 grams of protein per serving. You're like, oh, high protein. But whenever you're looking for products that say high protein, if the amount of protein in them versus the calories is like, so like if it's got like 200 calories and there's only 10 grams of protein, that means that only 40 of those calories are coming from protein and the other 160 are coming from other sources. So if you think about how much of that food you would have to consume to get enough protein in that meal, you would eat like 600 calories for 30 grams of protein. That's not going to give you a high protein source. I already mentioned that that's also not a complete protein. So you do want to watch your protein sources, because often protein sources can be also sources of carbs or fats or both. Protein bars are another big one. People eat protein bars, super dense in calories. Maybe they have 20 grams of protein, but they're also getting another 20 grams of fat, which is 180 calories, right? Like, so it's things like that you got to watch out for. And that's where she also mentioned, being careful with the types of beef. Beef is a great source of protein. It's also a great source of nutrients, but eating a lot of high fat beef is going to give you a lot more fat than it is going to be protein. So you have to balance that out with some leaner sources as well. I try and stick to, for myself, mostly top round, extra lean ground beef or lean ground beef, top sirloin, filet. Filet is going to be a little bit more in fat, but it's delicious. But I try and avoid a lot of like the ribeye steaks and New York strip steaks and ground beef that is like less than 90% lean. So those are all things that I would also watch out for. But thank you for adding that, Judy. Any other questions about protein? I want to make sure I covered everything. I'm going to end this on some key takeaways for you guys. Okay. So key takeaways. 1, make sure that you're looking for signs of protein insufficiency, like hormone problems, hair, skin, and nail problems, poor energy, lack of results in the gym, like you're not seeing muscle definition, lack of weight loss, poor appetite. All of those things are signs that you might not be getting in enough protein. Okay. Remembering that not all protein taken in is going to be absorbed. So your protein needs might be different than the typical person's, because if your gut is off, you might need to have more protein and maybe a little bit more faster digested protein to bypass the gut stuff that you got going on. Okay. We want to address the gut stuff, but that might help. Protein timing can be helpful, but only if you've got the basics covered, which is you're getting enough protein overall in the day. And for most people, that's going to be about 1 gram per pound of body weight or goal body weight. Okay. From there, we can look at making sure we're getting protein around our workouts, first thing in the morning and before bed. Okay. Those are some of the basic things that I want you guys to cover today. And then lastly, obviously, not all proteins are created equal. You want to make sure that you're getting in proteins that are going to be full of the 9 essential amino acids the majority of the time, but also looking at other sources of incomplete protein to help top things off. So that was pretty much it. If you guys have questions about not just protein, but nutrition in general, you have other things that you guys want answered, please feel free to reach out to me. I always love having good topics for this. And as I mentioned, I will be doing a workshop next month going over some things for women, hormones, and the impact of aging and hormones with our body composition, health, all that stuff, and kind of giving you guys a food forward focused way to address those problems. And the last question I see is, what is important in a balanced diet? Exactly what you just said. Have a balanced diet. A balanced diet should be full of nutrients, so protein, carbs, and fats, getting in plenty of micronutrients as well from your fruits and vegetables, and making sure that you're eating consistently throughout the day to keep your energy levels optimized. That's in a nutshell, balanced diet. When we talk about balanced diet, I think the main thing is like knowing what are your overall goals with your diet. That's going to help me help you more, so like there's goal specific changes to a balanced diet that we would need to make to see changes. All right. Well, I think I am signing off for today, but if you guys have any other questions, and Javed, I guess your name is, I hope I'm saying that right, or Javid, I can't pronounce that. Hopefully I'm not butchering your name. People butcher my name all the time, though. It's okay. I will talk about this a little bit. In fact, I'll make an Instagram post about this today to kind of go over what is a balanced diet. Balanced diet just sounds so boring, though, doesn't it? But it's honestly, if people realize how much the basics work, you would remove so many years and time of like frustration and wasted energy on things that just don't matter. Basics works every time. So that's all I got. If you guys have any other questions, you know where to find me. Shoot me over a message, and I will talk to you guys all next week. Have a good day.